The prison yard was full. Men were shouting. Guards were running. Smoke rose into the sky. Then the gates slammed shut. No one was going in. No one was coming out. Inside the prison, hundreds of inmates had taken control. Guards were trapped. Phones rang non-stop in government offices. News stations broke into regular shows. This was no small fight. This was a prison riot that would shock the entire country. And before it was over, it would change US law forever. But at that moment, no one knew how bad it would become, or how it would end. Now let's go back. Before the shouting. Before the smoke. Before the prison became a war zone. The prison sat in a quiet part of the United States. From the outside, it looked strong and calm. Tall walls. Guard towers. Locked gates. Inside, life was hard. Cells were crowded. Food was poor. Medical care was slow. Many inmates felt ignored and forgotten. Days felt long. Nights felt longer. Tension grew little by little. Most inmates followed the rules. They wanted to serve their time and go home. But others were angry. They felt the system was unfair. They felt no one listened. Complaints were written and ignored. Voices were raised and silenced. The pressure kept building. Like steam in a closed pot. The guards were under pressure too. They worked long hours. They were outnumbered. They worried every day about safety. Trust between guards and inmates was weak. Small arguments happened often. Everyone felt something bad was coming. The low moments came quietly. Missed meals. Broken showers. Delayed doctor visits. Each problem felt small alone. But together, they became dangerous. Inmates talked in whispers. They shared anger. They shared plans. Not all inmates wanted trouble. But when fear and anger spread, it was hard to stop. Then one day, something snapped. It started as a small fight. A push. A shout. A crowd gathered. Guards tried to break it up. But they were too few. The crowd grew louder. Angrier. Suddenly, doors were forced open. Keys were taken. Alarms sounded. And control was lost. The prison was no longer under guard control. It was under inmate control. Inmates took over large areas. Guards were trapped inside rooms. Some hid. Some were taken hostage. Outside, police rushed in. But they could not enter. The prison gates were locked from the inside. The news spread fast. Helicopters flew overhead. Police blocked roads. Families of guards waited by phones. Government leaders gathered in emergency meetings. America was watching. And asking one question. How did this happen? Inside the prison, fear mixed with power. Some inmates tried to keep order. Others wanted revenge. Leaders rose quickly. Rules were made. Lines were drawn. The prison became a city under siege. The high moment for inmates came when they realized they were being heard. News cameras were watching. Officials were listening. For the first time, their voices felt loud. They made demands. Better food. Medical care. Fair treatment. They said they would not give up until change came. The low moment came when time passed. Hours turned into days. Conditions worsened. Food ran low. Trust broke down. Tension rose again. Everyone knew this could not last forever. Something had to give. Negotiators spoke through fences. Megaphones carried voices across yards. Promises were made. Warnings were given. No one wanted bloodshed. But fear sat heavy in the air. One wrong move could end everything. Then came the extreme event that would push this story into history. A deadline was missed. Talks broke down. Loud noises echoed across the prison. Smoke filled the air. People outside gasped as they watched live footage. The situation had reached a breaking point. And the choice facing authorities would change prison law in America forever. The question was no longer if the riot would end. It was how. And at what cost. The prison did not sleep. Inside the walls, men stayed awake through the night. Fires burned in metal barrels. Shadows moved across broken concrete. The air smelled of smoke and fear. Outside the walls, The world watched. Police lights flashed non-stop. Helicopters circled above. News reporters spoke in serious voices, telling viewers that a prison riot was still out of control. And it was getting worse. Inside the prison, inmates tried to organize. Some wanted peace. Some wanted change. Others wanted chaos. There was no single voice. No single plan. Different groups argued about what to do next. Time made everything harder. Food supplies were low. Water was limited. Sleep was short. Tempers grew hot. Guards who had been taken hostage were scared. Some were injured. Some were exhausted. Inmates promised not to hurt them, but fear stayed strong. Families of the guards waited at home, staring at phones, praying for calls. Every hour felt like a year. Negotiators returned the next morning. They stood outside the prison fence with loudspeakers. They asked inmates to stay calm. They promised talks. They promised safety. Inmates shouted back demands. They wanted better food. They wanted fair treatment. They wanted medical care. They wanted to be treated like humans. For a moment, hope returned. Talks moved forward. Both sides agreed to rules. No violence. No punishment afterward. No lies. The prison yard became quieter. People believed something peaceful might happen. The low point came slowly. Some inmates felt the talks were fake. They believed the system would break its promises again. They shouted that giving up now would change nothing. Arguments turned into fights. Trust began to fall apart. Outside the prison, leaders faced pressure. Some officials wanted to wait. Others wanted force. Everyone knew one thing. If this went wrong, lives would be lost. And the blame would last forever. Hours passed. Then days. The prison yard became dirty and crowded. Trash piled up. People were tired. Hungry. Angry. Small fights started again. The fragile peace was breaking. The extreme moment came when violence broke out inside the yard. Negotiators were told things were out of control. Hostages were in danger. The situation had crossed a line. Outside, leaders made a decision. A decision that could not be undone. Police and armed teams prepared. Helicopters lined up. Tear gas canisters were loaded. Medical teams stood ready. The order was given. The prison would be taken back by force. When the operation began, it happened fast. Helicopters roared overhead. Gas filled the yard. People ran in every direction. Shouts echoed off concrete walls. The prison turned into chaos again. When the noise finally stopped, the yard was silent. Smoke drifted slowly. People lay on the ground. Guards rushed in. The riot was over. But the cost was high. Too high. News stations struggled to describe what had happened. Families cried. The country reacted with shock. Questions came fast. Who was responsible? Was this handled the right way? Could it have ended differently? The prison was back under control. But the damage was done. Lives were lost. Trust was broken. And the nation was demanding answers. This was no longer just a riot. It was now a national crisis. And the final chapter would decide how America remembered it forever. The prison yard was quiet. Too quiet. Smoke drifted above the walls as guards moved carefully through the space. Medical teams worked fast. Inmates were ordered to lie still. The riot was over, but the shock had just begun. Outside the prison, the country reacted with anger and sadness. People wanted answers. As news reports came out, the truth became clearer. Lives had been lost. Many more people were hurt. Families of inmates cried on camera. Families of guards demanded justice. Everyone asked the same question. Why did it end this way? Investigations began immediately. Government leaders promised full reviews. Lawyers arrived. Witnesses were interviewed. Photos and videos were studied again and again. The public learned how bad prison conditions had been before the riot. Crowded cells. Poor medical care. Long delays. Ignored complaints. Things many people had never seen before. The low moment came when officials admitted mistakes. Negotiations had failed. Decisions were rushed. Communication broke down. Trust was lost on both sides. The country struggled to accept what had happened. Courts became the next battlefield. Families filed lawsuits. They demanded accountability. They wanted the truth. Judges listened. Evidence was shown. Testimony lasted for years. The riot did not end when the gates reopened. It followed the nation into courtrooms. Slowly, change began. Prison policies were reviewed. Rules for negotiations were rewritten. Use of force guidelines were tightened. Independent oversight increased. The government promised that something like this would never happen again. The high moment came when new laws were passed. Prisoners were given clearer rights. Medical care standards improved. Outside groups were allowed to inspect prisons. Communication channels were strengthened. These changes did not erase the pain, but they reshaped the future. The prison itself changed. New leadership arrived. Training improved. Systems were updated. The walls still stood tall, but the silence inside them felt different now. Heavier. Years later, people still talk about that riot. Not because of the chaos alone, but because it forced America to look inside its prisons, to see what was hidden, to ask hard questions. This prison riot changed US law forever. It showed what happens when voices are ignored for too long. It proved that fear and force cannot fix broken systems. And it reminded the nation that justice must exist even behind locked doors. The riot ended in smoke and silence, but its impact echoed far beyond the prison walls. Into courtrooms, into laws, into history. That is where this story ends. With a nation changed, a system exposed, and a lesson America will never forget.